November 11th, 2012. Ambergris Cay, Belize. 3 p.m. The heat is oppressive. The air is thick with salt and humidity. A convoy of black trucks tears down a dirt road, kicking up a cloud of dust that hangs in the air like smoke. Inside, the trucks are men from the Gang Suppression Unit, the GSU. They are heavily armed. They are wearing balaclavas, and they have orders to secure a compound belonging to the most dangerous man on the island. They hit the gate at speed. They spill out, shouting commands, weapons raised. They kick down the doors of the main house. They sweep the guest bungalows. They tear through the laboratory. They shoot the dogs. They are looking for a murderer. They are looking for a drug lord. They are looking for a 67-year-old software tycoon worth millions of dollars. But the house is empty. The coffee is still warm. The computers are humming. But the target is gone. The soldiers fan out. They check the jungle perimeter. They check the dock. Nothing. They assume he fled by boat. They assume he is halfway to Mexico. But here is what those soldiers don't know. They are standing right next to him. 50 yards away, buried in the sand, John McAfee is breathing through a cardboard box. He has dug a hole in the beach, covered himself with debris, and placed a box over his head to create an air pocket. He lies there for hours. Ants crawl over his skin. The sound of boots crunching on the sand vibrates through the ground into his terrifyingly silent world. He is not a Navy SEAL. He is not a spy. He is a programmer. He is the man who invented the software that protects your grandmother's email. And yet, in this moment, lying in the dirt, while a paramilitary death squad hunts him, he is exactly where he feels most alive. They never find him. The trucks leave, the dust settles, and as the sun sets over the Caribbean, the sand begins to move. A hand reaches up, and John McAfee rises from the earth. He doesn't run. He doesn't panic. He lights a cigarette. He realizes that the game has changed. The police aren't just trying to arrest him. In his mind, the entire world is trying to delete him. But John McAfee is not a file you can just erase. He is a virus, and he is about to go viral. To understand the madness of the man in the sand, you have to understand the mind that built the machine. You have to go back to a time before the internet was a weapon. Santa Clara, California. The digital world was innocent. Computers were glorified calculators used by academics and hobbyists. There were no firewalls. There was no cyber warfare. Trust was the default setting. Then came the Pakistani brain. It was the first PC virus in history. Created by two brothers in Lahore, it wasn't malicious. It was a copyright protection tool gone rogue. But when it hit the United States, it spread like a biological contagion. It infected boot sectors. It slowed down systems. It terrified the nascent tech industry. John McAfee was working at Lockheed at the time. He was a mathematician, a coder, and a functioning addict. He saw the brain virus, and where everyone else saw a nuisance, he saw an empire. He realized something fundamental about human nature. Fear sells. Fear is the ultimate currency. If you can make people afraid of the invisible, they will pay anything to be safe. He quit his job. He started a company in his living room. He wrote a piece of code designed to hunt down the virus and kill it. He called it Virus Scan. But the code wasn't the genius part. The genius was the delivery system. He gave it away for free. He uploaded it to bulletin board systems. He told people to share it. He infected the market with the cure. Once he had the user base, he went to the corporations, the banks, the governments, the Fortune 500s, and he told them, the public is protected, but you are wide open. He sold them licenses for millions. By 1990, John McAfee was making $5 million a year. By 1992, during the Michelangelo virus scare, a scare he personally inflated to near hysterical levels, his company went public. He was worth $100 million. He was the prince of Silicon Valley. He had the cars, he had the planes, he had the respect. But inside the mind of John McAfee, there was a glitch. He was a man who understood systems. He understood that every system has a flaw, and he began to apply that logic to society itself. He looked at the government, the tax system, the laws, and he saw them not as rules to be followed, but as code to be exploited. In 1994, he did the unthinkable. He resigned. He cashed out. He looked at the monster he had created, the bloatware, the corporate bureaucracy, and he walked away. He took his fortune and disappeared into the wilderness of yoga retreats and ultralight aircraft. He thought he was retiring, but a man with that much processing power and that much paranoia cannot sit still. He needs a problem to solve, and if he can't find a problem, he will create one. The global financial crisis. The world economy melted down. Fortunes evaporated overnight. The news reported that John McAfee, the tech titan, had lost everything. They said his $100 million fortune had shrunk to $4 million. They said he was broke. This was the first great deception of his second act. McAfee didn't lose his money. He hid it. He looked at the United States, a country tightening its grip on regulation, taxes, and surveillance, and he decided it was time to leave. He liquidated his assets. He moved his cash into shell companies, and he looked for a place where the law was a suggestion, not a mandate. He found Belize. Belize is a paradise for people who don't want to be found. English-speaking, corrupt, wild. It is a country where a few $1,000s can buy a police chief, and a few million can buy a private army. McAfee bought a compound on Ambergris Cay. He bought a jungle estate in Orange Walk. He arrived not as a retiree, but as a savior. He promised to build infrastructure. He promised to boost the economy. He started a ferry service. He opened a coffee shop. But his real project was in the jungle. He built a laboratory. He hired a microbiologist, Alison Adonizio. He told the world he was researching a new class of antibiotics derived from jungle plants. He called the company Quorumx. He claimed he was going to cure infection. He claimed he was going to save the world. But visitors to the lab noticed something strange. The equipment wasn't just for plants. There were precursors. There were solvents. There was a frantic, manic energy to the research. Rumors began to circulate in the dark corners of the internet. McAfee wasn't making antibiotics. He was trying to synthesize a compound known as MDPV, methylenedioxypyrovalerone. On the street, they call it bath salts. It is a psychoactive stimulant. It induces euphoria, sexual arousal, and superhuman strength. But the side effects are specific: extreme paranoia, hallucinations, and psychosis. John McAfee wasn't just cooking drugs to sell them. He was the subject of his own experiment. He was taking the compound. He was refining it. He was pushing his own brain chemistry to the breaking point. The Silicon Valley genius was gone. In his place was Colonel Kurtz. By 2011, the compound in Orange Walk had transformed into a fortress. McAfee surrounded himself with a harem of young local women. Some were former prostitutes. Some were as young as 18. He kept them in the main house. He gave them gifts. He gave them weapons. And he had guns. Lots of guns. He hired a private security force. But he didn't hire professionals. He hired local toughs, gang members, men who owed him loyalty because he paid them in cash and product. He armed them with shotguns and assault rifles. He patrolled the perimeter of his property like a warlord. And then there were the dogs. McAfee loved dogs, but his love was overwhelming. He had 6, then 10, then 12. They roamed the property in a pack. They were aggressive. They barked at everything: the wind, the shadows, the neighbors. To McAfee, the barking wasn't a nuisance. It was an early warning system. His paranoia had metastasized. He believed the Belizean government was watching him. He believed the cartels wanted his formula. He believed the CIA was plotting his rendition. He began to post on drug forums under the handle Stuffmonger. He described his experiments with MDPV. He detailed the shadow people he saw in the corners of his room. He wrote about the hypersexuality and the feeling of being a god. But to his neighbors, he wasn't a god. He was a nightmare. Gregory Faull was a builder, an American expat from Florida. He lived 2 houses down from McAfee on the beach in Ambergris Caye. Faull was a normal man. He liked peace. He liked quiet. He hated the dogs. The dogs attacked tourists. They barked all night. Faull complained to the town council. He complained to the mayor. He confronted McAfee. This was a fatal error. You do not confront a man who is running a private militia and freebasing experimental stimulants. On Wednesday, November 7th, 2012, Gregory Faull filed a formal complaint against John McAfee with the local mayor's office. He stated that the dogs were vicious and that McAfee was unstable. 3 days later, the dogs were dead. McAfee found them in his yard, 4 of them, poisoned. They were convulsing, foaming at the mouth. He watched them die. He pulled out his 9mm pistol and put them out of their misery, one by one. Something snapped in John McAfee that afternoon. He didn't see a neighbor dispute. He saw an assassination attempt. He saw a strike on his family. He stood over the bodies of his dogs, the gun smoking in his hand, and he decided that the law no longer applied. Sunday morning, November 11th, 2012. The housekeeper arrived at Gregory Faull's house. It was raining. The door was unlocked. She walked in. She called out his name. Silence. She found him in the hallway. He was lying face up in a pool of blood. He had been shot once in the back of the head. There was no sign of forced entry. Nothing was stolen. His laptop was there. His wallet was there. It was an execution. The police arrived. They found a single 9mm casing. In a small island community, everyone knows everything. The police knew about the dispute. They knew about the complaint Faull had filed on Wednesday. They knew about the poisoned dogs on Saturday. They looked north, toward the compound with the high walls and the armed guards. The gang suppression unit, the GSU, was mobilized. This wasn't a job for the local constable. They loaded into trucks. They racked their weapons. They headed for McAfee's house. This brings us back to the sand. When the GSU kicked down the door, McAfee was already in the hole. He listened to them tearing his house apart. He listened to them confiscating his weapons. But here is the twist. The police didn't have an arrest warrant for murder. They only wanted to question him. If McAfee had stayed in the house, if he had called a lawyer, he might have walked away. There was no forensic evidence linking him to the scene. No gun was found that matched the bullet. No DNA. But guilt is a powerful hallucinogen. Or perhaps it wasn't guilt. Perhaps it was the MDPV. Perhaps it was the narrative he had built in his head, that this was the final showdown. He stayed in the sand for hours. When the coast was clear, He dug himself out. He went back into the house. He grabbed a bag. He grabbed his young girlfriend, Sam. And John McAfee, the millionaire, went on the run. The manhunt was instant. The Prime Minister of Belize went on television. He called McAfee bonkers. He urged him to turn himself in. The world media descended on Belize. CNN, Fox News, the BBC. They all wanted the story of the tech mogul turned killer. McAfee watched them from the shadows. He didn't leave the island immediately. He hid in plain sight. He knew that the police were looking for a frantic white man with blonde highlights. So he changed the code. He shaved his head. He dyed his goatee black using shoe polish. He put on an oversized shirt. He stuffed his cheeks with chewed bubble gum to change the shape of his jawline. He blackened his teeth with a marker. He adopted a limp. He walked past the police checkpoints. He sat in cafes while reporters broadcasted live shots just feet away. He was testing the system. He was proving that the facial recognition software, the human intuition, the dragnet, it all failed if the target refused to act like a target. He bought burner phones. He began to blog. This was his masterstroke. While on the run, suspected of murder, he started a website, whoismcafe.com. He updated it daily. He taunted the police. He posted videos claiming he was innocent. He claimed the Belizean government killed Faull to frame him because he refused to pay a bribe. He turned the manhunt into a reality show. He controlled the narrative. He forced the world to look at his version of the truth. But he couldn't stay in Belize forever. The net was tightening. He needed to cross the border. He needed an exit strategy. He contacted Vice magazine. He told them he would give them an exclusive. He would let them document his escape. 2 journalists, a reporter and a photographer, flew down. They met him in a safe house. They were awestruck. Here was the outlaw king, armed, dangerous, and charismatic. They traveled with him. They crossed the river into Guatemala. It was a perilous journey, moving through the jungle, avoiding patrols. They made it to a resort in Rio Dulce. They were safe. McAfee felt invincible. He posed for a photo with the vice editor-in-chief. He looked defiant. The jungle was behind him. He was holding a drink. Vice posted the photo to their website. The headline, "We are with John McAfee." But they made a mistake. A rookie mistake. A mistake that a tech genius like McAfee should have caught. They didn't scrub the metadata. Hidden inside the digital file of the photograph were the EXIF data coordinates. Latitude and longitude, precise to within 10 meters. The internet found it in seconds. Fortune found it. The police found it. McAfee was sitting by the pool when the news broke. The world knew exactly where he was. The Guatemalan police were mobilizing. Interpol was watching. He claimed later that he had engineered the leak himself to throw the police off his trail. He claimed he wasn't actually there. But the panic in his eyes in the subsequent footage suggests otherwise. The man who outsmarted every agency had been undone by a smartphone setting. The Guatemalan police arrested him. They threw him in a detention center. He was facing deportation back to Belize, back to the murder investigation, back to the prison where he believed he would be killed within 24 hours. He was trapped. The walls were concrete. The guards were armed. There was no sand to bury himself in. He had one card left to play. December 6th, 2012. McAfee is in a holding cell in Guatemala City. The order for deportation has been signed. The plane is waiting. Belizean authorities are waiting on the tarmac. McAfee falls to the floor. He clutches his chest. His eyes roll back. He is convulsing. He stops breathing. The guards panic. They call for a medic. They call for an ambulance. El Gringo is dying. He is rushed to the hospital. He is put on a stretcher, an oxygen mask over his face. The cameras are flashing. The world sees John McAfee, the 67-year-old fragile man, suffering a massive cardiac event. His lawyers file an emergency injunction. You cannot deport a man who is actively dying. It violates international human rights law. The deportation is halted. The Belizean plane takes off empty. McAfee lies in the hospital bed. The doctors run tests. They check his enzymes. They check his EKG. They look for the blockage. They find nothing. His heart is fine. His blood pressure is fine. He waits until the lawyers confirm the stay of execution. He waits until the plane is gone. Then he sits up. He takes off the oxygen mask. He smiles at the nurse. "I faked it," he would later tell reporters. "It's a trick I learned. You hold your breath. You tense your muscles. You create the symptoms. The system is designed to save lives. So I hacked the system." He had outsmarted the doctors. He had outsmarted the deportation officers. He had bought himself time. And in that time, the United States government intervened. They didn't want him extradited to Belize, a country with a dubious human rights record, especially now that the world was watching. They negotiated a deal. John McAfee would not be sent to Belize. He would be deported to the United States. He was put on a commercial flight to Miami. He sat in coach. He ordered a drink. As the plane lifted off from Guatemala, he looked down at the jungle one last time. He had left behind his fortune. He had left behind his compound. He had left behind the body of Gregory Faull. He landed in Miami a free man. There was no arrest warrant in the US. The Belizean police had no jurisdiction. The FBI questioned him and let him go. He walked out of Miami International Airport. He hailed a taxi. He had gotten away with it. Or so he thought. Most men, after surviving a manhunt and a murder investigation, would disappear. They would buy a small house in the Midwest. They would change their name. They would live quietly. John McAfee went to South Beach. He was famous now. Not just tech famous, infamous. He was the outlaw. He was the joker. He met a prostitute named Janice Anywhere from a day to a week after landing. She was decades younger than him. She had a past. She was working for a cartel, supposedly to spy on him. McAfee knew this, and he married her anyway. "Keep your friends close," he said. "Keep your enemies in your bed." He began to rebuild, but he didn't rebuild a software company. He rebuilt his armory. He bought a compound in Tennessee, then another in Lexington. He bought high-powered sniper rifles. He bought enough ammunition to fight a small war. He started a new company, Future 10 Central. He focused on privacy apps. He preached about the dangers of government surveillance. He became a libertarian hero. But the paranoia was still there. It was growing. He stopped using drugs, allegedly, but the mania remained. He believed the cartel was still hunting him. He believed the Belizean government had sent hit squads to America. He traveled with a security detail. He never slept in the same room 2 nights in a row. He drove with a gun on his lap. And then he found a new obsession. A new chaotic system that fit his worldview perfectly. Crypto. It was 2016. Bitcoin was rising. The unregulated Wild West of finance. It was anonymous. It was anti-government. It was perfect. McAfee declared himself the messiah of crypto. He made outrageous predictions. He famously tweeted that if Bitcoin didn't hit $500,000 within 3 years, He would eat his own genitalia on national television. The internet loved it. He started promoting altcoins, ICOs, initial coin offerings. He would tweet about a coin in the morning. The price would spike 100%. He would sell his holdings. The price would crash. It was a classic pump and dump scheme. But he did it openly. He did it with flair. He claimed he was making $105,000 per tweet. He was making millions again. But there was a problem. The Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, the IRS, the Department of Justice, they were watching. They saw the tweets. They saw the bank transfers. They saw the tax returns, or rather, the lack of them. John McAfee hadn't paid taxes in 8 years. He went on TV and bragged about it. Taxation is theft, he said. I have not paid, and I will not pay. He was poking the bear. He was standing in front of the most powerful government on earth and daring them to strike. And the bear was getting ready to maul him. In a move that can only be described as performance art, McAfee decided to run for President of the United States. He ran as a libertarian. His platform was simple. Dismantle the government. Legalize drugs. Pardon everyone. He campaigned from exile. He claimed the IRS had indicted him, though it wasn't public yet. He and Janice went on the run again. They lived on a yacht. They sailed the Caribbean. He called it the Freedom Boat. He wore t-shirts and sunglasses. He smoked constantly. He posted videos of himself surrounded by guns and alcohol, ranting about the deep state. He was having the time of his life. He was the pirate king. But the water was getting rough. The yacht was tracked. The Dominican Republic authorities boarded the vessel. They found the guns. They arrested him. He spent 4 days in a Dominican jail. He tweeted the whole time. He claimed the walls were covered in feces. He claimed they treated him like a dog. When they released him, they deported him to London. He was bouncing around the globe, a man without a country. No one wanted him. The US wanted him in handcuffs. Belize wanted him for questioning. Europe tolerated him, but barely. He ended up in Spain. October 2020. He was hiding in an abandoned hotel. He was mining crypto. He was recording podcasts. He thought he was safe in Europe. He thought he could fight extradition. But the Department of Justice had finished their file. They unsealed the indictment. Tax evasion, fraud, conspiracy. They issued an Interpol red notice. John McAfee was at the airport in Barcelona, about to board a flight to Istanbul. He was wearing a mask made of women's underwear, a final act of defiance against the COVID regulations. The Spanish police stopped him. They ran his passport. The computer beeped. This time there was no sand. There was no heart attack trick. There was no disguise. They put him in handcuffs. They took him to Brian's 2 penitentiary. The trap had finally snapped shut. Brian's 2 is a stark, concrete facility outside Barcelona. It is cold. It is orderly. It is the opposite of the chaos McAfee thrived in. He spent 9 months there. He fought extradition. He tweeted from prison via his wife. He wrote that he was content. I have nothing. I regret nothing. But the walls were closing in. The Spanish High Court was deliberating. The US prosecutors were sharpening their knives. They wanted to put him in a federal supermax for the rest of his life. June 23, 2021. The ruling comes down. The Spanish court approves the extradition. John McAfee is going home. Not to a hero's welcome, but to a cell in Tennessee. He goes back to his cell. He is 75 years old. He has lived 1,000 lives. He has been a genius, a billionaire, a fugitive, a killer, a prophet, and a clown. He asks the guards for some time alone. What happens in that cell in the next hour is the subject of intense debate. The official story is suicide. A man who refused to die in a cage on American soil took his own life. But the internet, the very monster he helped create, didn't buy it. 2 years earlier, McAfee had tweeted a photo of a tattoo on his arm. It read, $WACD. He wrote, "If I suicide myself, I didn't. I was whacked. Check my right arm." The conspiracy theories exploded. Dead man switch, the QAnon connection, the secret files on the government. Did he kill himself? Or was he silenced? Or did he pull off one final trick? Rumors began to circulate that the body in the morgue wasn't him, that he had faked his death one last time, that he was sitting on a beach in an undisclosed location, laughing at the world. But looking at the trajectory of his life, the truth is likely darker. John McAfee didn't fear death. He feared boredom. He feared irrelevance. And sitting in a US prison for tax evasion was the most boring ending imaginable. So he wrote his own ending. He left behind a legacy of chaos. He proved that the systems we trust, the law, the border, the banks, the internet, are fragile. They can be hacked. They can be broken. He was the glitch in the matrix. But as the officers cut him down in that Spanish cell, they found one last thing. A note, a file. No. They found nothing. No confession. No master key. Just the silence of a man who had finally stopped running. Or had he? Because weeks after his death, his Instagram account posted a single image. The letter Q. Even from the grave, the Black Hand was still trolling. So what is the legacy of John McAfee? Is it the antivirus software that still bears his name? The software he famously mocked in a viral video, where he tried to uninstall it while surrounded by guns and women. He hated that software. He called it bloatware. Is it the murder of Gregory Faull, the unsolved crime that forced him into exile? To the family of Gregory Faull, John McAfee is simply a killer who bought his way out of justice. Is it the crypto scams, the pump and dump schemes that cost his followers millions? To the SEC, he is a fraudster, a con man. But to a generation of hackers, libertarians, and crypto anarchists, John McAfee is something more. He is a symbol. He represents the absolute limit of individual freedom. He pushed the boundaries of what a single human being can do against the weight of the state. He proved that you can live outside the law if you are smart enough, rich enough, and crazy enough. He predicted the surveillance state before Snowden. He predicted the rise of crypto before Bitcoin was a household name. He saw the future, even if he was too damaged to live in it. There is one final theory, a theory that persists in the darkest corners of the web. Some believe John McAfee isn't dead. They point to the discrepancies in the autopsy. They point to his previous fake heart attack in Guatemala. They point to his constant claims that he had body doubles and escape plans. They say he is sitting on a beach in a non-extradition country, drinking a whiskey, laughing at the obituary headlines. They say he pulled off the ultimate hack. He deleted himself. It is unlikely. It is improbable. But with John McAfee, impossible was just a word he hadn't hacked yet. The man in the sand, the man in the jungle, the man in the cell. January 31st, 2026. No, the date doesn't matter. The man is gone, but the glitch remains. John McAfee was a virus in the operating system of society. He exposed our vulnerabilities. He showed us that our security is an illusion. And in the end, he proved that the only way to truly win the game is to stop playing.